My name is Evelyn Carter, and at 72 years old, I thought I had learned everything there was to know about people. I was wrong. The hardest lesson of my life came from my own children. For most people, I looked like an ordinary retired widow. I lived alone in the same house my husband and I bought 40 years ago. I drove a modest car, tended my garden every morning, and spent my afternoons reading books or volunteering at the local library. To the outside world, I was just another elderly woman enjoying retirement. What nobody knew was that after my husband passed away 20 years earlier, I quietly built a successful real estate business. I never flaunted my wealth. I never talked about investments. I never believed money should define relationships, especially not family relationships. My two sons, Daniel and Michael, knew I was comfortable, but they had no idea how successful my investments had become. And I preferred it that way. At least I did until everything changed. The first warning signs appeared shortly after my 72nd birthday. Daniel began asking strange questions. Mom, are you still comfortable driving? Mom, have you considered moving somewhere safer? Mom, wouldn't it be nice to have people around all the time? At first I thought he was simply concerned. Then Michael started asking similar questions. Every conversation somehow turned toward agging, toward safety, toward assisted living, toward retirement communities. I found it odd, but I didn't think much about it. After all, children worry about their parents. At least that's what I told myself. Then one afternoon, I met a friend for lunch at a small cafe downtown. As I walked toward my table, I noticed Daniel and Michael sitting together in a corner booth. They hadn't seen me. I wasn't trying to listen to their conversation. In fact, I intended to walk past them without interruption. Then I heard my names, and everything changed. Michael leaned forward and said, "She doesn't know we're touring places yet." Daniel nodded. "The sooner we get her settled, the easier it'll be." I stopped walking. My heart began pounding. Then Michael asked a question I will never forget. "What about the house?" Daniel shrugged. "We sell it. Sell it. My house. The house I owned outright. The house filled with 40 years of memories." I felt sick. But it got worse. Daniel laughed and said, "Once she's in the facility, she'll never fight it." In that moment, I realized they weren't discussing possibilities. They were making plans. Plans for my future. Without me. Plans for my home. Without me. Plans for my life. Without me. I quietly left the cafe before they could see me. That night I barely slept. Part of me wanted to call them immediately and demand answers. Another part wanted to believe I had misunderstood. But deep down I knew exactly what I had heard. The next few weeks only confirmed my fears. Daniel and Michael became unusually interested in my finances. They asked about property taxes, insurance, maintenance costs, future plans. Every conversation felt like an investigation. Then one morning, Michael accidentally sent me a text message. I could tell immediately it wasn't meant for me. The message read, "Sunset Gardens looked perfect, she'll never know." A few seconds later, the message disappeared. But not before I had read it. Sunset Gardens. The name made me smile. Because there was one thing my sons didn't know. I owned Sunset Gardens. 5 years earlier, one of my companies had quietly purchased the retirement community through a holding corporation. The property wasn't listed under my personal name. Most employees didn't know who the owner was. Residents didn't know. Apparently neither did my sons. For the first time since overhearing their conversation, I laughed. The irony was incredible. Out of every retirement community in the state, they had chosen mine. A month later, they invited me to lunch. Daniel looked nervous. Michael looked excited. Their wives sat silently beside them. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom, we found an amazing retirement community." I nodded politely. "Really?" Michael smiled. "It's beautiful. The staff is wonderful. The residents love it." I already knew exactly where this conversation was going. Then Daniel said it. "We scheduled a tour." I pretended to be surprised. "A tour? Tomorrow?" Everyone stared at me, waiting for resistance, waiting for arguments. Instead, I smiled. "That sounds lovely." The relief on their faces was immediate. They thought I was agreeing. They thought their plan was working. They had no idea what was about to happen. The next morning, we arrived at Sunset Gardens. The facility looked beautiful. Perfect landscaping, fresh flowers, clean walkways. Exactly the kind of place families proudly recommend. The executive director greeted us at the entrance. The moment she saw me, she recognized me. Of course she did. We had met several times during ownership meetings. To her credit, she remained completely professional. She said nothing. My sons noticed nothing. As the tour continued, Daniel became more confident. Michael kept pointing out features. "Look at this dining room. Look at these gardens. Look at these activities." They acted like real estate agents trying to close a sale. Finally, we entered a private conference room. The same conference room where ownership meetings were held. The director smiled. "Mrs. Carter, what do you think?" I folded my hands. "It's beautiful." Daniel smiled. Michael smiled. Their wives smiled. Then I added one more sentence. "I especially like the renovations." The director nodded. "They turned out very well." I smiled back. "They should." I approved every dollar. The room went silent. Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" I looked directly at him. "I own this facility." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. For several seconds, the room felt frozen. Then Michael laughed nervously. "Mom, seriously." "I'm completely serious." The director quietly placed a folder on the table. Inside were ownership records, corporate documents, financial statements, proof, undeniable proof. Daniel opened the folder. The color drained from his face. Michael stared at the paperwork. His wife covered her mouth. Finally, Michael whispered, "You own Sunset Gardens." "Yes." "Since when?" 5 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Daniel asked a question that told me everything I needed to know. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Not Mom, we're sorry." "Not Mom, we made a mistake." "Not Mom, are you okay?" His first concern was why he didn't know. I looked at both of my sons and realized something painful. They didn't see me as their mother anymore. They saw me as a problem to manage. An obstacle. A responsibility. Perhaps even an inheritance waiting to happen. I stood up slowly. Then I said something they desperately needed to hear. "You never asked what I wanted. Neither spoke. You asked about my house." Silence. "You asked about my finances." Maury, silence. "You asked about retirement communities." Still silence. "But neither of you asked how I felt." Daniel stared at the floor. Michael couldn't meet my eyes. I continued. "You made plans for my future without me. You discussed selling my home. You toured facilities behind my back. You assumed age made me helpless. Nobody had an answer, because everything I said was true. For the first time in years, they were forced to see me not as an nagging parent, but as an independent woman, a business owner, a decision maker, a person. That meeting changed our family forever. Not because I disinherited them, not because I cut them out of my life, because I established boundaries. Real boundaries. For the first time, my sons understood that my age did not give them authority over my life. Months later, both apologized. Real apologies. Not excuses. Not explanations. Apologies. Trust took time to rebuild. But eventually, things improved. Today, I still live in my own home. I still drive my own car. I still manage parts of my business. And every few weeks I visit Sunset Gardens. Not as a resident, as the owner. Sometimes I sit in the lobby and watch families visit their loved ones. And I think about the lesson this experience taught me. Growing older does not make you invisible. It does not make your voice less important. And it certainly does not give anyone else the right to decide your future. No matter your age, your life still belongs to you. And if someone forgets that, sometimes the most powerful response isn't anger. It's simply reminding them exactly who you are. And the look on their faces when they finally realize it. That part is absolutely priceless.